Yasmin or Sunki, maybe today you can start reading, nah?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Yet behind every great religion.
Let me connect my phone. Just every great religion behind, that is to say, its esoteric side of faith, hope, symbols, scattered truth, and limiting dogmas, there is an esoteric side of inner spiritual training and illumination by which the hidden truth may be known, worked out, possessed. Behind every exoteric religion, there is an esoteric yoga, on intuitive knowledge, to which its faith is the first step, inexpressible realities of which its symbols are the figured expression, a deeper sense of its scattered truth, mysteries of the higher planes of existence of which even its dogmas and superstitions are crude hints and indications. What science does for our knowledge of the material world, replacing first appearances and uses by the hidden truth and as yet occult powers of its great natural forces, and in our minds, beliefs and opinions by verified experience and a profounder understanding. Yoga does Yoga does for the higher planes and worlds and possibilities of our being, which are aimed at by the religions. Therefore, all this mass of graded experience existing behind the closed doors to which the consciousness of man may find, if it wills, the key falls within the province of a comprehensive yoga of knowledge, which need not be confined to the seeking after the absolute alone, or the knowledge of the divine in itself, or of the divine only in its isolated relations with the individual human soul. It is true that the consciousness of the absolute is the highest reach of the yoga of knowledge, and that the position of the divine is its first, greatest, and most ardent object, and that to neglect it for an inferior knowledge is to afflict our yoga with inferiority or even frivolity, and to miss or fall away from its characteristic objects. But the divine in itself being known, the yoga of knowledge may well embrace also the knowledge of the divine and its relations with ourselves and the world on the different planes of our existence, to rise to the pure self-being, steadfastly held we may from that height possess our low self, even the physical and the working of nature which belongs to them.
Okay. So, I don't know whose internet. Usually in Korea, the internet is good, so it must be our internet. There was a lot of disturbance and it was not very clear some of the reading. Anyway, so I read each sentence and we see whether we can understand what he's saying. Remember, the chapter is the lower triple Purusha. He's talking of the mental Purusha, the vital Purusha, and the physical Purusha. Okay? So, today what we've read, we'll read now each sentence and see whether it is clear. So, he has been speaking earlier about the planes of consciousness, and now he's starting from the lowest levels. Okay? So, now, yet behind every great religion, behind, that is to say, its exoteric side of faith, hope, symbols, scattered truths, and limited dogmas, there is an esoteric side of inner spiritual training and elimination by which the hidden truths may be known, worked out, and possessed. So, there are two aspects to every religion. There is an external aspect, like going to church on Sundays, like going to the mosque on Fridays, and going to the temple, visiting even the ashram. Okay, all these are the external. I'm not belittling these things. They are necessary in the beginning. But when you reach a certain level where you don't need to do this external thing, the exoteric symbols, you can go into and you don't need to do all this because you have entered the deeper aspects. And the deeper aspect is yoga. So he is telling you that every religion has got two aspects. Okay, one is the external, in which only the forms are there. Okay, you have the form and you are doing the rituals and whatever it be, reciting prayers, okay, having sermons. These are all the external aspects. But there is an internal aspect, and that behind every religion there is an internal aspect. Not very obvious, but through every religion you can access the divine. What he is using a very interesting word, divine in himself. The divine in himself means only the divine without seeing him in the physical world. Okay, the divine in himself, not out of himself. Out of himself would be the universe or the individual. But this is possible for every religion. We know, for instance, in Christianity, how many saints there have been. Okay? Saint Augustine, I'm not sure, but Saint Teresa, Saint Catherine, then even Joan of Arc, all these are great saints. Okay? Bernadette, Saint Bernadette, she was also only 100 to 200, 150 years ago, Bernadette. She was a young girl and she saw Mother Mary. So it is possible to go into the inner through Christianity. What about Islam? Okay. What about the Sufis? The Sufi religion, they go very deep. In fact, the Sufi religion takes much of their inspiration from the Vedantic ideas. Okay. So there also is wonderful. Similarly, in the Parsi religion, I am not sure of any great person, but surely there must have been many who had reached a certain level. So behind every religion, there is these things. We know in Jainism, we know that there was the Mahavirs, the 24 Tirthankaras. So everywhere there are two aspects, external and internal. That's what he's saying. Okay. Now, behind every exoteric religion, the external aspects, there is an esoteric yoga. The yoga is the one in which you can go outside the external symbols and go into the inner essence. Okay? And intuitive knowledge, to which its faith is the first step. So you must have faith first and then you can enter into it. If you don't have faith, the doors are closed. You yourself are closing the door. I don't have faith in this, therefore the doors are closed. So faith must be the first thing which you must have. And this is interesting because this is exactly what Ramakrishna practiced when he wanted to know the truth of Christianity. He had faith in Christ and he saw Christ also in the subtle world. Then Buddha, okay, and when he practiced Islam also, he started wearing Islamic clothes. He was wearing a lungi and a skull cap, and he was not even looking at the Indian gods and goddesses. So that is faith. You must have faith, and that first is the first step in this saying, and it takes you into the inexpressible realities of which its symbols are the figured expression. They are the outer expression. The deeper sense of its scattered truths. Sometimes in these truths are all scattered. They are not always, you don't get the whole truth. The truth is always, you get one aspect of the truth. In all religions, in all even spiritual experience, you get only one aspect, not everything. As you keep climbing higher and higher, more and more they start becoming obvious, and at the highest level, all the aspects are there, but not in the lower levels. Okay, so behind every exoteric religion, there is an esoteric yoga. Exoteric external, esoteric internal yoga. And intuitive knowledge to which its faith is the first step. Inexpressible realities of its symbols are the figured expression. Note the word, both expression and figure. Figure is representing of something. And expression also, I am using words to express my thoughts. The thoughts are the essence, the words are the expression. Okay? They are never the same. They are always there is a difference. The expression and the figures are always more limited than the essence. a deeper sense for its scattered truths, mysteries of the higher planes of existence, of which even its dogmas and superstitions are crude hints and indications. Even the ideas which you are holding wrong in religion, they have some sort of truth. That's what Sandhu is saying. But very distorted truth. Okay. So, again I've lost the page. Just 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, I've got it now. So, now he's comparing with science. Exactly the same thing also science does. Huh? So, what science does for our knowledge of the material world, replacing first appearances and uses by the hidden truths and as yet occult powers of its great natural forces, and in our own minds, beliefs and opinions by verified experience and a profounder understanding. So, science, let's take science. For instance, when you see the wind, you only think it is wind. Okay? But when you go deeper into it, you know that there is an energy in it, and you can extract the energy. You are going into the deeper aspect, and then you find out the how to use that energy. So the research of science is the yoga in the spiritual field. Okay? You go and then very clearly what Swami is saying, verified experience. You should not take anything dogmatically, and if you have one experience, it should be tested and tried and again done to see that it is something really a law that is operating. Sri Aurobindo has said in one letter to Dilip Kumar Roy, no one has done research in the spiritual field as much as I have. I have done it more than any scientist can do. So he used to test all the powers that he used to get. Again and again he used to test that power to see whether it is really applicable and to what extent you can apply it. Finally he started going even at the universal level. He was controlling events. No? We know that. He was controlling events in Russia, he was controlling events in Turkey, in Dunkirk in the war. Okay? So many things he was trying to do. Okay. This is what he's saying. It has to be tested. It has to be very, very. Science and yoga are not different in their methods. Both are same. Don't take anything for granted. Okay. The only thing is, in science, there is a disbelief, and then when you get the knowledge, then you start doing. But in yoga, you have to start with faith, with belief. That's the only difference. So what science does for our knowledge of the material world, replacing first appearances, and first appearances, I see only the wind. But now I realize that it is an energy which I can tap. I've gone beyond the surface. Then I know that the sun is giving us light. But I find out afterward that there is not only heat, but there are alpha rays, gamma rays, beta rays. There are so many different types of rays. I thought in the beginning that the atom is the last. Then I realized that no, there are even smaller particles of matter, even smaller than the atom. Okay? The neutrons and protons and whatnot. It goes on and on. You have to verify. So, and it gives you a profounder knowledge. Yoga does the same for the higher planes and worlds and possibilities of our being, which are aimed at by the religions. So religions in their external want you to go to the internal, and they can be doors to go to the mysterious spiritual laws. You can go. That's possible through all religions. If you don't get stuck at the only the outer forms. Therefore, all this mass of graded experience existing behind closed doors, to which the consciousness of man may find if it wills. Okay? Mostly man does not want to find because he disbelieves. But if he wills, he can find the key. Okay? Falls within the province of a comprehensive yoga of knowledge, which need not be confined to the seeking after the absolute alone or the knowledge of the divine in himself, in itself. The knowledge of the divine in itself is the transcendent. the transcendent is very clearly the divine in itself. That, in other words, the divine is not there in the universe. That would be the cosmic aspect. He is talking, you must first get the knowledge of the divine in itself, pure divine, without its mixture in the universe or in the individual. That's what he's saying. Or of the divine only in its isolated relations with the individual human soul, or realize the truth within yourself. That's not what Yasmin was saying. You know the fire within yourself, the psychic being. Okay, that's the. He is saying that also is good, but the transcendent is very important. Transcendent you can get vertically, and the other one, the individual human soul, you have to go horizontally into yourself. It is true that the consciousness of the Absolute is the highest reach of the yoga of knowledge, and that the possession of the divine is its first, greatest, most ardent object, and that to neglect it for an inferior knowledge is to afflict our yoga with inferiority or even frivolity. Frivolity, lightness, not seriousness, no seriousness, frivolous. Okay, if it comes, it's good. If it doesn't come, it doesn't matter. We are not doing playfully. Okay, that's not to be done. So the knowledge of the divine in himself is essential. That's what I'm saying. And to miss or fall away from its characteristic object. The yoga, he's talking of the yoga of knowledge. In the yoga of knowledge, knowing the divine transcendently is the most important, without the physical world. That's it. Note again, he is talking all of the Jnana Yoga. He is not talking of the Bhakti Yoga. Because that's what he is saying. You must get the divine transcendently. Okay? How is that? The word used as highest reach and absolute and knowledge of the divine in itself. All these point to the transcendent. The divine in the cosmos is different. The divine in himself is the transcendent. Okay? It is true that the consciousness of the absolute is the highest reach of the yoga of knowledge, and that the possession of the divine, okay, is its first, greatest, and most ardent object, whose the Jnana Yoga path. And that to neglect it for an inferior knowledge is to afflict our yoga with inferiority or even frivolity, and to miss or fall away from its characteristic object. But the divine in him itself being known, the yoga of knowledge, I lost the page, just one second. Yeah, the yoga of knowledge may well embrace also the knowledge of the divine in its relations with ourselves. So now he is talking of the relations of the divine with ourselves. That means in the individual and the cosmos and the world. So in relations is the individual, and with the world is the cosmic. Okay? And the world in different planes of our existence. To rise to the pure self, being steadfastly held to as the summit of our subjective self uplifting, we may, from that height, possess our lower selves even to the physical and the workings of nature which belong to them. The workings of nature, body, mind, life. Okay? Our lower selves, body, mind, life, including even to the physical, if you want. But essentially, you must get the divine in himself first. The transcendent is absolutely important. That's what it is. Okay? If you want to, if you don't go to the transcendent, you will not be able to possess your body, mind, life. Okay? Possessing our lower nature means controlling mind, life, and body. But that won't be possible unless you go to the transcendent and know the divine in himself. There we are. So, we may see this knowledge on two sides. We can read the next one. It is 8:15. We got plenty of time. Yeah.
I'm
I'm
reading.
reading.
I'm reading.
Yeah, go ahead.
We may seek this knowledge as two sides separately, the side of Purusha, the side of Prakriti. And we may combine the two for the perfect position of the various relations of Purusha and Prakriti in the light of the divine. There is, says the Upanishad, a fivefold soul in man and the world, the microcosm and the macrocosm. The physical soul, self or being, Purusha Atman, is that of which we are all at first conscious, a self which seems to have hardly any existence apart from the body and no action vital or even mental independent of it. This physical soul is present everywhere in material nature. It pervades the body, actuates obscurely its movements, and is the whole basis of its experiences. It informs all things, even that are not mentally conscious. But in man, this physical being has become vitalized and mentalized. It has received something of the law and capacities of the vital and mental being and nature, but its possession of them is derivative, superimposed, as it were, on its original nature and exercised under subjection to the law and action of the physical existence and its instruments. It is this dominance of our mental and vital parts by the body and the physical nature which seems at first sight to justify the theory of the materialists that mind and life are only circumstances and results of physical force and all their operations explicable by the activities of that force in the animal body. In fact, entire subjection of the mind and the life to the body is the characteristic of an undeveloped humanity, as it is in an even greater degree of the infrahuman animal. According to the theory of reincarnation, those who do not get beyond this stage in the earthly life cannot rise after death to the mental or higher vital worlds, but have to return from the confines of a series of physical planes to increase their development in the next earthly existence. For the undeveloped physical soul is entirely dominated by material nature and its impressions and has to work them out to a better advantage before it can rise in the scale of field.
This last part is very interesting, and we'll look at that, what he is saying. So we start from the highest, from the beginning of the para, but it's very interesting what he's saying. The development of the soul is very important in the case of the reincarnation. So suppose you are at a very, very physical level, okay? What happens is, there is a, note the word physical soul, huh? there is a personality, there is a mental Purusha, there is a vital Purusha and even a physical Purusha. So, physical soul is your subtle body. Okay? And if you are limited only to the physical world, when your body dies, what happens? You are going to the subtle body. Okay? There is a very undeveloped vital and an undeveloped mind, and so you can't go to the higher levels. Okay, so you go up to that, and that's the limit of your climb after death, and so you take birth again from the subtle physical level down again to the into the physical world. And this is what happens when there are many who remember their past lives. This is exactly what happens. Those who remember their past lives very easily, and there are any number of cases, okay, that means their soul has not developed sufficiently and they have gone to the physical world and taken birth again. I'm not saying that all those who remember their past lives are of this character, not at all. Because if you go, on the other hand, if you go to the highest level also, you will remember all your past lives. But those who are remembering only the external aspects of past lives, they are usually of this nature. You are very, very limited to the physical world and your soul is not developed enough. After death, the body dissolves. Your soul, which is trapped in the subtle physical, goes up to the subtle physical level and takes birth again. That's what happens also at the animal level. The animal level also, the soul is undeveloped and it goes after death of the body, whether it be a cow or a dog or a cat, and comes back into a physical body. Okay? And this continues until the soul is sufficiently developed and can go to the vital level, then it can go to the mental level, and finally it can go to the psychic plane. So it takes a lot of lives. In one case, the tantrics say a lack of lives. Okay? And there are others who say even more. So it's very slow progress. Okay, so that's what he's saying in the latter part of the paragraph. We'll go to the beginning of the paragraph. There are many people who say that, oh, if you remember your past lives, you must be a very evolved soul. Not at all. Okay. Those who are remembering only their outer, there are many cases on the internet. Okay. Very interesting cases. So anyway, so now I'm reading this. I'm reading the first sentence. We may seek this knowledge. Which knowledge is talking about? The divine in himself. Remember? So we may seek this knowledge on two sides separately. The side of Purusha and the side of Prakriti. So Purusha is the consciousness and Prakriti is the energy, the spirit and matter if you want. Okay. So even in matter, it is possible to realize that aspect. We'll go into detail about that later on. And we may combine the two for the perfect possession of the various relations of Purusha and Prakriti in the light of the divine. So when you go to the highest level, the relation between Purusha and Prakriti becomes clear. Okay? There is, says the Upanishad, a fivefold soul in man and the world, the microcosm and the macrocosm. We go on saying this, man is the microcosm and the universe is the macrocosm, and they are essentially the same, but only one is a condensed form and the other is an expanded form. That's all. Okay, that's the only difference. So, what is the fivefold soul? We come back to the basic idea. I tell you what it is. Annamaya Purusha, the physical soul. Pranamaya Purusha, the vital soul. Manomaya Purusha, then Vijnanamaya Purusha, and finally Anandamaya Purusha. These are the 5 levels that they are talking about. But as we have discussed many times, it need not be 5. It can be even 7, which Srimdu follows. Or it can be only 3. Okay? The gross world, the subtle world, and the causal world. Okay? As we have read previously, Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti. 3 levels. But here the Upanishad is speaking about 5 levels. You can of course speak of, Mother speaks of 12 levels. So that's not the important thing. But the reference to the Upanishad's 5-fold soul is this one. Annamaya Purusha. Annamaya means material. Pranamaya Purusha, the energy aspect, the power aspect. The Manomaya Purusha, the capacity of thought. Then Vijnanamaya Purusha, and finally the Anandamaya Purusha. These are the divisions. The physical soul, you might be surprised, now. People will say, what the hell is this physical soul? That's physical of a soul, because there is a subtle physical, and that subtle physical is the soul. It's an individual. Individuality is there. Okay? So, self or being, he is using 3 words: physical self, physical soul, physical being. Purusha, Atman, is that of which we are all at first conscious. We are only conscious of our body. A self which seems to have hardly any existence apart from the body, and no action, vital or even mental, independent of it. We are aware only of our physical body, and there may be a soul for the physical body, which is the subtle body. And no action, vital or even mental, independent of it. This physical soul is present everywhere in material nature. So behind the matter that you see, there is a soul, a divine presence. But it is at the material level, and it is subjected to the laws of matter. Therefore, although the divine presence is there, it is hidden, and it is itself not conscious. It has to rise. It pervades the body, actuates obscurely its movements, and is the whole basis of its experiences. So, actuates obscurely its movements, he is talking about the body consciousness. No? The body consciousness we have discussed many times. When you cough, it's a body consciousness. The body is trying to get rid of something which is not desirable in the throat. When you are um, when you are hungry, the body is telling you that I need energy. So it's a consciousness. When you get a cut, it is healing itself. It is immediately sealing the wound. So there is a consciousness. So that is the consciousness talking about. Actuates obscurely its movements. Okay? We don't see the reason for it, but it does it. Okay? And is the whole basis of its experiences. The cut that we get and the scab, that the coagulation of the blood that comes, we can see. But when you are ill, also inside which we don't see, there are the white blood cells. They start attacking the other end, swallowing all the, and then your fever goes away, whatever it is. Okay, so that we don't see. But the body is obscurely conscious and doing what needs to be done. Actuates obscurely its movements and is the whole basis of its experiences. So you need not think that the physical soul is something absolutely a soul, but it has got an inkling, it's got a small amount of consciousness subject to the physical laws. That's what it is. That's a physical soul. Okay? So, this physical soul is present everywhere in material nature. It pervades the body, actuates obscurely its movements, and is the whole basis of its experiences. It informs all things. Informs again, remember, the word Surendra uses informs in the sense of going into the form, entering into the form. This consciousness, this physical soul, enters into the body. It enters all things, even that are not mentally conscious. Stones and even lower levels of animals everywhere. But in man, this physical being has become vitalized and mentalized. The body has been vitalized and mentalized. It has received something of the law and capacities of vital and mental being and nature. But its possession of them is derivative, superimposed, as it were, on its original nature and exercised under subjection to the law and action of the physical existence and its instruments. In other words, even when the capacity of thought comes in, it is in the body, it is subject to the physical laws. It is subject to the laws of tamas. That's what he's saying. It is this dominance of our mental and vital parts by the body and the physical nature which seems at first sight to justify the theory of the materialists that mind and life are only circumstances and results of physical force and all their operations explicable by the activities of that force in the animal body. So the material man, science thinks that matter is the origin of everything. Okay? You can't blame him, because if he is at that level, that's what he will think. In fact, it's very confusing. Surendra says that only at the supramental level you come to know that it's a secondary creative factor. Matter is a creative element, but it's a secondary creative element. That you come to know only at the highest level. Even in the overmind there are doubts. Okay? Which is the real creator? Up or down? That's the problem that one is faced. So until the scientist finds out that no, it is a Satchidananda that is the real origin of everything, he will continue to think that matter is the creator of everything. And he won't be wrong. He will only be partially wrong and partially right. In fact, entire subjection of the mind and life to the body is a characteristic of an undeveloped humanity. Now he is going to talk about the rebirth, as it is in an even greater degree in the infrahuman animal. The animal is only at the physical level, although it's got a vital, but no mental. So after the physical body dies out, the physical soul in the animal goes up to the subtle physical and takes birth again. according to the theory of reincarnation, those who do not get beyond this stage in the earthly life cannot rise after death to the mental or higher vital worlds, but have to return from the confines of a series of physical planes to increase their development in the next earthly existence. So you have to keep coming back to develop yourself more and more and more and more until finally you are capable of the soul in you can go from the physical level to the vital level to the mental level. It's a long journey for the soul. But the undeveloped physical soul is entirely dominated by material nature and its impressions and has to work them out to a better advantage before it can rise in the scale of being. So, very interesting what you said. Remember that. Those who remember their past lives very easily, and they even tell you where they have lived, and even I mean, it is so interesting. If you want really, you go to the internet and type out reincarnation cases, and you will get small children remember their past life. They even know the town they were in. They know the name of their wives. They know the shop they were running. All these things are there. It's very interesting and absolutely accurately they tell you things. So there is no question a minute of. But if you are more developed, you can remember your past lives, but essentially you realize that you are the soul, okay? And you have taken birth again. That of course you do. Mother has identified so many of our past lives. Surendra has identified not many, but he was very silent on them. But one he has said very clearly, I was conscious of my contact with Dilip Kumar Roy in ancient Greece. We know that. Okay, so it's 8:33. I have to stop here. So Sonki, page 462. No, 461, no? Yeah, 461.
Yes.
And we have to a more developed humanity. We have to go.
Yes.
Okay.
May I see
Thank you, Rangadan.
Okay.